And tell me what, those lads pushed our buttons sometimes. Ben stood on the front doorstep saying bye to them, and they really didn't want to go, so they would try and find anything. And they literally came up and pulled Ben's trousers down, and he was stood on his front doorstep in his pants.
Welcome everybody, this is Simon Gilbert with Inspired. It's great to be back with you. I'm excited about today's guest. Today is Amy Woodfield. Amy and Ben are married and working. Well, Ben is running the Antioch Network in the Diocese of Manchester as a sort of pioneer minister, vicar type. Their passion is working on sort of estates, urban communities, inner cities, and we've sort of overlapped at a few sort of conferences over the years, be it New Wine, Proximity in Manchester. They were part of the Eden Network, setting up an Eden project. Looking forward to coming to all that, Amy. And you are, as well as being a mother of 3 kids, and teaming up with Ben, you're a therapist working with children with early life trauma. Nicola Neal said, I had to podcast you guys, that's our mutual friends. So, and I suppose I would have liked to have done both of you, but actually because I'm in my bedroom and you're in your kitchen, we can't see each other, I just thought it'd be easier to get one of you. So you pulled the long or the short straw, I'm not sure which way around it is, but welcome.
Oh, hiya. It's great to be here.
Yeah, really.
To chat with you, Simon.
Yeah, totally looking forward to what you got to share with us. Listen, I know virtually nothing. I mean, I've done obviously a bit of research, but in terms of going back to your childhood, your background, what were your formative experiences back then?
So I was born into a Christian family. My dad's a vicar. He went to train as a vicar when I was about 1 year old. Mm-hmm. So I suppose as part of that, we moved quite a lot in my early years up to the age of 11. I've got a great family, mum and dad who showed me a lot of love. We generally lived in really nice parts of the country. Mm-hmm. My extended family, particularly on my mum's side, were all Christians, and my grandparents were fervent prayers for me. But I would say quite a formative thing that happened when I was younger. When I was 9 years old, my older brother actually died in a road accident.
Oh dear, sorry.
And just a couple of years later, we moved again. And I look back and I would say that was a really formative time for my faith and my future, to be honest, and the decisions that I've made. And I definitely saw my parents' faith at that time was their strength and their rock, and that was a huge witness to me, and has definitely carried me and formed my heart for children and young people who have experienced different traumas, and also me moving and living most of my adult life on council estates. So yeah, that's my early years in a nutshell.
So was your faith journey then sort of by dint of it being modelled well, or was it like by osmosis that you know, no dramatic sort of encounter with Jesus? It was just you knew that he was there with you the whole way?
I would say predominantly, yeah. I've never really had times of completely turning my back on God. And I think that was because I just couldn't deny that he's a rock and that he's there. And so when I was 11, we then moved, and that wasn't long after I'd lost my brother. So we moved from Royal Tunbridge Wells in Kent all the way up to a place called Glossop in Derbyshire, which is like, you know, an ex-mill town. They just felt such completely different places. You know, even my accent was different, and everyone seemed to know each other in Glossop or be related somehow. And I think for me, age 11, that could feel quite lonely sometimes. And I would truly say it was God that held me through that. I think in my teenage years, you know, I did have times of trying to live my life my way, but I would always come back to God. And through my teenage years in particular, there was different anchor points. Generally, to be honest, when I went on like Christian camps, or we seemed to spend all our holidays on Christian camps.
Right.
And yeah, I just was brought back to the Father, really, and to him and his love, and I couldn't really deny that. So there was never like a major encounter, I would say, but there's definitely been points where I've intentionally gone, God, I trust you in this, and I've really seen him come through.
Yeah, yeah. And you were you met as teenagers, didn't you and Ben? Were you childhood sweethearts from the get-go?
No, so when I was 18, I decided to defer uni and go and do a year out, and that was with something called the Pays Project over in Manchester. And I remember that was a moment of putting my trust in God, because I'd got a place at uni, and then I went to this big like youth event in Manchester that the Message Trust ran, and someone stood up and talked about Pays, and it was doing performing arts. I was really into theatre and drama, going into schools and sharing Jesus, really. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. This is what is setting my heart on fire. So I rejected my uni place and in faith applied for Pays. And it was there that I met Ben. So I was 18, he was 19. We were both on the same team. We didn't like each other to begin with. Actually, he laughs about the fact that in our training week at the beginning of Pays, we'd had this talk about how there's going to be someone on your team that really annoys you and you have to pray about it. And Holy Ben came up to me and was like, Amy, it's you. You're the annoying one. I was like, oh, thanks.
Ruthless.
Yeah, he did. And he said, but I'm praying about it, don't worry. So be careful what you pray for, basically. And then, a couple of years, literally a couple of years later, while I was still at uni, we got married.
Wow.
Aged 21 and 22.
Wow.
But I think one of the key things that drew us to each other was we both developed this heart for urban areas and estates, because that was a big part of what we did on Pays. Ben was in an area called Newton Heath. I was in a place called Failsworth, both, areas of high deprivation, working with young people. And that was like one of the times that God really set our hearts on fire for those areas. So right from the beginning, we knew.
And give us some stories from those times you see God at work.
Oh, what, on Pays? Oh, it was crazy. Gosh, that's a long time ago, Simon. Talking 22 years. I'll never forget, so I was 18 and we were all given like a responsibility that we had to see through in this year out. And I was given the job of taking some young people on this weekend away that the Assemblies of God organisation ran. And I found it really stressful, to the point I think I had about 8 girls coming away. We'd sorted like the minibus and everything, and then the minibus arrived and it didn't have proper seatbelts, and half the girls' parents said they couldn't come, and I was like, oh my life, what is this? And I took them away, and we arrived, and it was bedlam. It was like all these inner city kids. But I remember one of the other leaders coming up, and these kids were starting to like surrender like bottles of vodka, weed, other drink, like stuff like that. And they were like, I don't think I need this weekend, do I? And it was amazing. It was like the first night, and just God working in those young people's lives. And I remember that really clearly, actually, because it was chaos, but we saw, some of these young people encounter Jesus for the first time. So it was kind of worth the stress, really.
Yeah.
But also, I think for me, like personally, God did so much in me at that time. And I would say that was like a year of me really encountering the Holy Spirit fully for the first time. Yeah, I feel like God set me free of stuff. And I had a moment on that year out of, Amy, you're either fully in this or just sack it all off. Yeah. And I just thought, I'm in. God, I'm in. So it was a catalyst really for the rest, my life so far.
Yeah. Well, we've had, so much good stuff going on in and around Manchester, not just through the Message Trust, but a lot through them, isn't it? We've had Andy Hawthorne on, who was brilliant. We've had Lynn's West. And so you were massively shaped by them, were you?
Oh, definitely. Like all my teenage years, because I lived on the edge of Manchester. The Message used to run something called Planet Life, and it was like a youth worship night, really. And we used to go to that every month. And I'd say it definitely really shaped me. And the first time I heard about Eden, I was about 15 at one of those meetings. And at that age, something just set on fire in my heart, really. Every time I heard about it, I thought, I just love the idea of that. There was a real connection there. So I'd definitely say that. And then obviously we went on to work, at the Message for most of our 20s. And when you get to hear Andy preach every week, you can't help really be shaped by him and the work that goes on.
He is
so
definitely inspiring, isn't he?
I know.
And energetic.
And
so you set up, do you want to just explain quickly what an Eden Project is?
Yeah, so Eden is where a team of people move into an area that's within 10% most deprived part of the country and live and work there. There's a paid team leader. The rest of the team are volunteers. They have their paid jobs in the day, and then in the evenings and weekends, serve the community in whatever way God is calling. Initially, Eden was particularly focused on youth. So when we were part of Eden, it was very much a youth project within a community. They were always partnered with local churches and work alongside them. So yeah, that's how Eden works. And initially it was just Manchester, but now, I think they're in other countries now as well. So that's cool.
So you set up an Eden Project. Was that your first estate in Manchester?
Yeah. Other than our year out, that was our first estate. So we'd been in Lancaster before that. I was at uni. Ben was working, and age 21, 22, we moved to Old Trafford. Can I just tell you a little bit about how that happened, Simon?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's just God at work again. So I was doing my theatre degree, and I remember there was times I was like, oh Lord, I've got this heart for, vulnerable young people and children and estates. But at the moment I'm at uni, and is there something I can be doing while I'm here? And I really sense God say, I want you to focus on what I've asked you to do now, which is this degree. And I was part of the Christian Union, and I remember telling a friend of mine from Manchester, the heart me and Ben had, and, we'd love to be on estates and stuff like that. And came to my third year, and me and Ben got married in my second year. So we were at the stage of wondering what was next. And this friend of mine came up to me and she said, there's a job as a youth worker at a church in Old Trafford in Manchester, and I've been filling out the application form for it. And as I've been asking God what to write, I felt like he said, this isn't for you. You need to give this application to Ben and Amy Woodfield.
Wow.
So she came and we looked at it and we were like, wow, this looks scary but exciting. And we applied for that job as a job share, and the vision of it was that it was in partnership with the Message Trust, with the idea that it became an Eden Project. So fast forward, 6 months, we were moving into a little council house in Old Trafford on this estate, and we moved there as youth workers. We job shared, and that's how we ended up there, really.
And give us highlights, lowlights.
I would say we were there 7 years, and I would say my faith was, the only way I can describe it, it was like putting a washing machine, put on full spin.
Wow.
And then pulled out again. Because I just every thoughts or views or how I thought God would work or works was kind of shaken up and almost spat out again.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, in Africa's done that to me. You have your tidy theological boxes and boom, they get blasted.
Oh, completely. So we thought, early 20s, we thought, we'll move on to this estate. And just to give you a bit of a view of this little estate in Old Trafford, we were the inner city end of Old Trafford, which, if you know Manchester, we bought Hume, Whalley Range and Moss Side, which were very well known at the time for a lot of gang culture. We moved to this little estate where there was boarded up flats. We were given a council house almost immediately because we were told people only want to move off this estate, and if you want to move on, it's to sell drugs. There was a point where delivery vans wouldn't deliver there because they would get ransacked. So we, as you can imagine, culture shock moving into this council house. that was, I mean, it was just in the worst state imaginable. We couldn't really believe they'd let people move in. So God did a lot of work in us and flipped our heads of how you do urban mission. And it's not, we're going to go in and save everybody, which I think naively we thought would happen. We'll tell these young people about Jesus and they'll accept him and then their lives will be radically transformed. You know, we did see lives changed, but it was very much, actually, God is already at work here. Let's join in with what he's doing. And we did see community transformation physically, I'd say, more than anything. And the community realising that they did have worth and value. We met with a lot of young people. We saw some of them come to faith. We're still in touch with some of them. But equally through those times, I mean, one girl that we journeyed with a long time and we're still in touch with now, it's just been really painful to see her journey from abuse early on and really difficult mental health problems. And then more recently, she sadly lost her brother and Ben went back and did the funeral. So I'd say that's kind of highs and lows really of that time. And I feel like it really shaped how we view doing urban mission. And I think for a lot of people, they stay in their areas. And, you know, I know you've interviewed a couple of people who do estate work, and a lot of Eden people who moved into their estate at the same time as us are still there. But we in particular have felt called to move on and kind of move to different estates and plant church there. So that's our story, but of Eden. But it holds a huge special place in our heart, Old Trafford. So we used to do a little Bible study in our house with these two lads who we knew since we were 11. Not we were 11, sorry, since they were 11. That'd be weird. And I mean, it was mad. They used to come in and they didn't want to leave at the end. They just loved it. They just loved probably just having that time and attention. But I'll never forget doing this Bible study with them. They had no Bible knowledge or background. And we're reading these passages and I'd go, so what do you think that means? And this lad, Nathan, would literally just spiel off what it meant. What his understanding of the Bible was amazing. And it was just definitely the Holy Spirit at work in his life, really. And tell you what, those lads pushed our buttons sometimes. Ben does tell a story, Simon, where he was stood on the front doorstep saying bye to them and they really didn't want to go, so they would try and find anything, and they literally came up and what we call kept him and pulled Ben's trousers down and he was stood on his front doorstep in his pants like safeguarding.
I love it.
But we literally lived in this house that was in the middle of this little tiny council estate, and all the houses looked in like a square. And these lads just, we had a laugh with them. But that was a funny moment, coupled with, it was just beautiful seeing God at work. And we had some mad Holy Spirit moments. Another girl, the girl I mentioned earlier, actually, it sounds a bit odd this, but I'll share it. We were praying with her and we were all on different, me and another leader and her. And we were praying and this girl said, I've got a vision of a light. I feel like God's given me a picture of a light. And we looked up and then we were chatting and we looked at this candle across the other side of the room and it had lit. And we were like, did you like that? No, like we had literally just all been sat there. Like nobody could have lit this candle. And for this girl, it was like, she really saw that as that was God. You know, and I can't explain that. I don't get it. And there's still a bit of it's like, did she somehow sneak across the room and light this candle? But there's no way she could have. She was sat right next to me. And it was just like, it was God saying, I hear you, I see you, and you hear and see me, and I'm in your life. And so they're just a few anecdotes.
Sure, love those. But you felt led to move on clearly, did you?
Yeah, it was really clear, actually. So a few people had said to Ben, you know, I think you should explore ordination and church leadership. To which I said, not in a million years. My dad was a vicar, or he only retired a couple of years ago. And I think I just saw and experienced, you know, the highs, but also the lows of what that is and what that can mean.
Yeah, my wife's the same. Lizzie, she was a vicar's daughter. She's like, I'm not marrying into that.
Never. I laugh and say, when I married Ben, he was a DJ and a youth worker. Now he's like a priest from the Church of England. So he said this to me, and I was just like, oh, Ben, I just don't know. But he explored it, and in the Church of England there is this kind of track called Pioneer Ministry, which is more around church planting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, fast forward, he got through his ABAP, which is your bishop's advisory panel for whether you're good enough. Only enough, no, I'm joking. And at the time you could do this kind of, most people do this now, but that like mixed mode training. So you stay where you are and kind of go to college elsewhere. So Ben was exploring that at the time, but we just got this sense of we need some time out, really. And we had a couple of words from people about having a time of rest. Mm-hmm. We'd been there most of our 20s in Old Trafford. We, by this point, had 2 children, Neve and Josiah, who were 3 and I think 6 months at the time.
Right, and so you're shattered.
Yeah, we were shattered. We'd done our 20s on this estate. You know, we'd led a team, and there'd been your highs and your lows. And yeah, we didn't want to burn out. We wanted to do this for the long haul. So we ended up moving to Nottingham, mm-hmm. St John's College at the time, which sadly is closed now. But and we literally, Simon, went to almost the opposite of the estate we'd been on. Moved to a detached house in the suburbs of Nottingham. Mm-hmm. I think that was the biggest culture shock for me. One day we were sat in the living room and I looked outside and I went, Ben, all the cars have gone. Like, where have all the cars gone? And I was like, oh, everyone's gone to work.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, our estate in Old Trafford, to be honest, there wasn't really cars. People didn't have cars. A lot of people didn't work. And the other moment, I think, for me was when I looked out the window and I had birds in the garden. And I was like, oh, we've got a garden, you know. Yeah. And, yeah, it was clear to move there.
So you recharged your batteries. Do you think that was the main part of that season?
Oh, definitely. Like, God just drew me to Psalm 23 almost every day that I spent time with him. Lord, what do you want for me in this season? And he was like, I've got it on my wall. The Lord's my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down green pastures. He leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul. He just kept saying, you need to rest. So I did actually do a little bit of work at that time. Like you said, I'm a therapist. I'm actually a drama therapist, and I qualified for that when we lived in Old Trafford. I picked up a little bit of work when we were in Nottingham, which was definitely a gift from God, because I qualified and then we moved. So I'd left any kind of connections I had with people and getting work. And then God provided a little bit of work for me there to kind of start my career in that. So did a little bit of work there and then just had a great time, really, being with the kids and building friendships that we're still friends with now and really support us through our ministry. But I think whilst we were there as well, God really highlighted that to have this community isn't where you're to be long term. Yeah. And I kind of pined to be back on an estate while we were there.
I get
so
that.
He made it quite clear.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm just wired for Burundi. You're wired, aren't you, both of you, for estate life?
Oh, my life, yeah. I felt like that, you know, at the time, and I think I needed to get it out of my system, to be honest, as well. Living in that community in Nottingham, and because I think for me, sometimes there could be that tendency of, oh, if only, Lord, you'd called us to, you know, a suburbia or a middle-class community where maybe I might feel more comfortable or whatever, or to kind of that grass is greener, which is so silly, really. But I think it's human, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I feel that to have those feelings, and I think having that time in Nottingham just showed me that that isn't, you know, where I'm most alive in God. And I just feel all my time on the estates we've been on, I've just met Jesus in the face of people,
Yeah.
in the most broken, you know, in the most hurting, and that's where I want to be. So yeah.
So was it all written in the sky very clearly that your next move was to Bolton, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so the way it kind of works in the Church of England, you're sending diocese, which was Manchester for Ben. They then look for a curacy for you, and we're at that stage of what they're going to offer. And you know, I was ready, Simon. I was like, Lord, you send us to the worst part of Manchester. Where is it? Like, I really was like, I don't care if it's rough or scary or like, I'm ready now. We've had our time off. We're ready. And
Which, without over bigging you up, I mean, it's different when you got kids, isn't it? Like, I mean, we had kids with burning barricades and gunfire and stuff like that. And I'm like, when I was single, you know, that was just exciting. Whereas now I really don't want it to go totally wrong. So just talk a bit of that faith, fear stuff as a parent.
Yeah, do you know what, Simon? I think I look at our seasons of the estates we've been on and where God's called us, and it does look different, you know, from when we first moved to Old Trafford as a young couple without kids to now. We've just moved on to another estate last year. And I think I would say it's constantly coming to God and saying, what do you want for us at this time? And not to kind of think, oh, I should be it should look like this, or this is what others think we should be doing. It's always looking to God, isn't it? And to his word and saying, what do you want for us at this time? And faith versus fear. I just think, especially like in the West and in our country, it's just very easy. I speak for myself here to kind of get caught up in what my life should look like as a mum of 3 children and middle class background, and what my children should be doing and things like that, and then looking at actually what's God's call on our life, and it might be tough, but just trying to trust him with it and hear his voice in it.
Yeah,
I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. I think it's still probably something I'm still
wrestling with it.
Wrestling with,
Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm loving the response we're getting from across the world. It's just wonderful to see how encouraging and inspiring it is being and hitting the spot. Listen, if you are being blessed by it, I'd love it. Basically, this happens under the auspices of our ministry, Great Lakes Outreach, which works in the poorest and the hungriest country in the world, which is Burundi. We're having an incredible impact in the toughest of circumstances. We want to carry on supporting those local folks doing a great job. So if you wanted to, greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. You could make a donation there. I'd so appreciate it. Also, it's word of mouth, isn't it? So gossip these podcasts to other people, get them to subscribe, give us a great review. Absolutely wonderful. So grateful to you. So that's greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. If you want to do a monthly, a couple of quid a month, or a one-off donation, we'd be incredibly grateful. All right, now let's get back to the podcast. So you land in Bolton, and then what happens?
So we landed in Bolton. Again, I was just like, oh Lord, I'm not sure this is right, this place. We were shown around the area, and it's quite a nice area. The place, it's called Astley Bridge. It's North Bolton. And I remember saying, oh, this will work for someone, Ben, but I don't think this is for you or for us. And then the vicar showed us this council estate in their parish. And he said, we're not doing a very good job at reaching this estate, and I think this is where I'd see you guys working. So we prayed a lot, and we moved and stepped into that. So when you say was it written in stone, we sought lots of people on it, especially our old vicar from Old Trafford because he's hardcore. We knew that he'd be like, no, you need to go somewhere else. And he was really wise and just said, it might not be like the most deprived estate in Greater Manchester or whatever, but you need to be thinking long term. And if you want to be in this for the long haul, you don't burn yourselves out fully now. Yeah. So we landed in Bolton, and the main thing that we had learnt from our time on Eden was we needed to live as close to or on the estate as possible. There was no point living even just 5 minutes up the road in a house. We were told, they'll probably want you to have one of these houses because it's like a curate's type house, but it was on this like new build estate that, completely different people group really to who was on Oldham's estate. And seriously, 3 weeks before we were due to move, a house came up that was right for us, and it was on the main road that led into the estate. So, do you know what? That was just completely God's provision again. It was amazing.
So, did you actually plant a church there?
Yes.
Go on, tell us about that.
We did, yeah. So, that was kind of Ben's mandate, really. That was what he was asked to do. So it was me and Ben. We had 2 children at the time, and there was one family that had come to faith at the parish church, which is where Ben was linked to, and they were from this estate, and they were starting to struggle a bit in the parish church. They just didn't feel like they fit.
Yeah.
So they basically became our kind of launch planting team in inverted commas. What that means is we used to meet in our house every week, and we would pray and read the Bible. And that's what we felt God was asking us to do. And I think that was a big learning curve as well for us, because we arrived with what we would call like a toolkit of ideas from when we'd, done Eden and stuff like that. And God just said, I want you to put it down. I want you to be on your knees and before me, and I'll guide you as to what's next. So that was humbling. So we used to meet in our house, and there was 2 other older ladies as well who had a heart for the area, and that's kind of how we started.
And then thankfully things began to grow. Is that right?
So we spent about a year doing that, a year praying and reading God's word, and we would invite others along who maybe were on the periphery of church and lived in the area or something. It's only quite a small estate. I think it's like 800 houses. I might have got that wrong, but it's about that. And then when it was like seasonal stuff, so we'd maybe we did like a bit of outreach at Halloween, and then on Valentine's Day, and like Christmas, we used to do like a live nativity around the estate. So we did some like anchor point outreach stuff, and we basically got to a point where we felt we needed to move from our house to a public space and like launch a Sunday gathering. And that was purely the fact that we could invite more people along because we couldn't fit people in our house.
Nice problem to have.
So that's kind of like how it started. But do you know what, Simon? We had, I would say, a year of us. Sometimes we would rock up. So we used the local youth centre, and we'd rock up and we'd set it all out, like set your chairs out and your music and all that. And there'd be like 10 of us. And when I say 10 of us, 5 of them were kids, our kids. And, sometimes we'd be like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this, Lord? Yeah. Have we heard you right? But gradually we saw, do you know what? We've seen some of the most beautiful, God do the most beautiful things in people's lives.
Go on, tell us some.
I will.
Talk about some miracles. Yeah.
So we've got a friend called Sean, and I know he doesn't mind me sharing this story, but Sean lived on the same street as us. He'd been a heroin addict for over 20 years. He's what we'd call maybe a functioning, to a degree, heroin addict. He had a family. His wife worked in a care home, and he was mainly kind of looking after the kids. And we used to see Sean walking them to school, and he looked grey, he looked thin. He just wore the weight of the world on his shoulders, really. And we used to kind of have this kind of rule at our church that if kids wanted to come, they needed to bring an adult with them. And his kids used to play out with some other kids of the family that we started church with. And they invited them to church. They said, oh, I think we were doing a messy church or something. So Sean came along with his kids. Now, he had been at a few of the community stuff that we'd done on the edge. So we knew him a little bit. And he came, and I'll never forget, we had these Why Jesus booklets out.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him reading it. I was like, Ben, he's reading the Why Jesus book, like getting dead excited. Like he's really known on the estate and stuff. And the following week, his wife came along, and they've got a son who's got a disability, and they've got 5 children between them, and got a son who's got a disability. And I remember her saying to me, I don't understand though, why would God let this happen? And basically that's where their journey began, and they just started showing an interest really in who Jesus was. Sean was from a Catholic background growing up, but he's had a really, really traumatic childhood. Started using when he was 18. So we had him, and then we had a couple of other people showing interest. One lady called Jenny, who was an alcoholic at the time, and again, she'd come along to a few different things. We did a pop-up barbecue on our estate, and she was again also slightly interested, and she got to a point of hitting rock bottom and said, I need to get sober. And we took her into our home one night with her daughter, took her to AA, and I think she's 5 years now. She's not had a drink, which has been beautiful. So Sean and Jenny and a couple of others, we did what we call an emergency alpha course, which is basically where we just show the videos in our house and all of a brew together.
Yeah.
We ain't got the time or space to do a meal and everything. Yeah. No, I'm only joking. So we set that up, and we just saw Sean's eyes open to the love of God in his life. And when he heard about the love Jesus had for him, I can see him now sat in my living room and just being blown away, like tears in his eyes. And then one week, God, it was about forgiveness, and he came to a point where with God's help, he could forgive the people that abused him as a child. And then Sean came off heroin, went on to methadone, and he's been clean now of heroin for about 4 years.
Wonderful.
And do you know what? It's through Sean and Jenny, and there is many other people that we have seen God transform their lives, that I feel that's where, to be honest, my faith grows the most when I see how God is working in their lives. And that road hasn't been easy. We still, Sean's actually now part of our new church plan. But another amazing thing with Sean was, so when people ask us, what's your evangelism strategy? We say, we just ask God who's next, actually. Yeah. We do maybe some other things, but we say, God, who's next? And Sean's very good friend at the time, a guy called Jamie, we knew of him, and we'd met him a couple of times. He used to drink a lot, use different drugs, nothing as heavy as kind of heroin, but still stuff that was, controlling him, and he was relying on it. And Sean said to us, I'm praying for him, I'm praying him in. And, Sean and Jamie will openly say they used to sit and smoke weed and read the Bible together. Discuss Jesus. And one night we got a text from Sean at something like 3 a.m, and it just said, God's got him. God's got him.
Lovely.
And we've seen Jamie's life like transformed. It's been absolutely beautiful, and he's part of a massive family on the estate. And just a guy on Sunday from that estate was saying, I've seen them in the gutter, and now look at them. Like, Jamie's working for the Message Trust. He's on their buildings team, and he got married in November, and he's an evangelist who wants people to know Jesus. So, we have seen like lives and families transformed by the love of God, and it's been a privilege to be a part of God's plan there, really.
Oh, I love those stories. It's messy, isn't it? I mean,
my life, yeah.
I'm sort of reflecting back from my situation here because, I mean, when we moved back from Burundi, I wanted to live on a rough estate, and there is one rough estate in the village where we are, which is where the kids go to school. Yeah. And we tried to move in there, and it just didn't work. So I actually feel that frustration of living, but I know God's given us this house, and we've been blessed beyond our wildest dreams, and a friend basically helped us massively. But we are not on the actual estate, which brings its challenges. And we are sort of a church plant of wonderful people, but it's people from outside the estate trying to help in and pouring in lots of time and resource, but not seeing that much fruit. Having said that, you talk about those guys reading the Bible over a spliff. I'm doing a lot of door to door. There's 974 houses on our estate, and a couple of weeks ago with this guy Ben, as he smoked his spliff, we prayed to receive Christ, and I hope that's going to lead to a discipleship journey. And then another lady, this is like 3 days ago, fantastically, just did some door knocking, and she was, who's next? She was just ripe, lovely lady, 6 months sober, been through a lot. You couldn't tell. She looked very respectable, actually, but and because she's a lady, I sort of finished the conversation and then contacted a friend, and she took her out for a coffee, and she's given her life to Christ. So amazing. Come on, you just want to see God at work, isn't it? But as you share, I suppose as we're talking right now, I'm hoping some people will be feeling that tug and that prompting of the Spirit. I need to be involved in this. What would be steps for people to get involved in terms of council estates, urban communities, inner city stuff?
I think sometimes we can look at our estates and deprived communities, and they can seem scarier than they are. I think there can be a lot of kind of talk around them, and you hear the worst stories and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, Simon, when I moved to Old Trafford, when we moved to Oldham's estate, it was scary. Like it's not that I don't give a monkeys, and actually in Old Trafford, I used to get quite a lot of stuff shouted and said to me as a young 20-year-old. But I think we've just got to take steps, really, and just to seek out what God is. I know it sounds so simple, but what is God already doing there? Who's like you've just said, he is drawing people to him. So I would say get involved in the community stuff that's already happening. That's what we're doing. So we've moved now to another estate, and that's what we feel God's calling us to do here, because there's already community stuff going on. So how can we support and bless what's already going on? And then to see where you can build relationships and friendships, and to dig deep into that area, really. So when we moved to Oldham's, Ben used to just once a week visit the local residents association group, and he'd take a pile of donuts and just get to know them,
right,
and chat to them. And now the lady that ran that, she's now a full-fledged member of the church and has brought half her family along.
Brilliant.
And I think there's something, isn't there, about saying we're here and we're here to stay. And obviously God can use us wherever, whether we're off the estate, like you said, or on. I think our experience has always been living on the estate, but where we are now, where we've moved to now, we're not right in the heart of that council estate. The house we've bought is it is a private, we've bought the house and stuff. So, and it's not ex-council. So one end of the road, we've got, quite a rough, I hate the word rough, but a road that's known to be quite colourful and lots of things going on.
Yeah.
And then the other end, we've got a nursing home and bungalows. So that's that's where God's called us to for here, for now. And I think it is saying, Lord, what are you asking of me? This is what's in my hands. This is who I am and where I'm at. But I want to serve you in that context. And also to remember that he's bigger than our fears and our doubts. I was reading Moses, actually. I was reading our little boy, the story of Moses in the burning bush. And actually it reminded me of when we first moved to Old Trafford, and I was feeling like, well, we can't do this. Like, we were scared. It is literally a different culture to us, that estate was. But God said, well, I'm going to give you all that you need. And it's taking those steps, isn't it, of faith.
Yeah.
It wasn't a short answer, sorry.
No, it's good. It's really good. You know, I've got loads more questions, but we're sort of running out of time. But I don't want us to miss out on anything that you want to get. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you really wanted to share?
I think, can I just give two things, Simon, and then maybe you can, to share really very quickly a very dark time that we went through. So we were on Oldham's estate for 7.5 years, and we've now handed it over to a curate. But we've seen leaders raised up from the community.
Wonderful.
And that's like the heart and the vision of Antioch and of the way that we church plant grassroots up. One really difficult time for us as a church community was we'd got to know a guy who was a heroin user, and he was going for a really tough time. And to cut that story short, we did see him baptised and come to know Jesus. He suffered a lot with mental health as well. It was the ebbs and flows, ups and downs of his walk with Jesus. And very sadly, he accidental overdose, and passed away. And that was a really tough time, as you can imagine. Yeah. Like, Lord, what the heck? He was only late 20s. He had his whole life ahead of him. He was actually a very bright young man, really. His dad was an atheist. I don't know what his mum thought, but she would say she'd never seen him so full of joy, except in those last 6 months. And we had this event a week after he'd passed away, and it was like an evangelistic event, and we were really feeling it. And we had this big kind of community bring and share. And that day, a friend had said to us, you're going to have to really rely on the Holy Spirit today, because his parents were like coming to this service and stuff like that. It'd only been a week since he passed. And we're serving food. My husband, Ben, is serving rice. We had like over 100 people there. We had only had food for about, I'd say, 40 people. And Ben shouts to the kitchen, is there any rice left? And we were like, you're done, mate. That's it. That was the bag of rice. And I'm not exaggerating here. Ben says that he and 2 other people witnessed this. He started stirring the little bit of rice in the bowl, and more rice started appearing in the bottom of the bowl. Wow. And it wasn't a big, like, everybody saw it. 2 people witnessed that with him. And he just sensed God was like, I'm here. And I hear you, and I'm going to provide this for you at this time. And, we can't explain that. And like I say, not everybody saw it. It wasn't like this big crazy miracle in the sense of that it was witnessed by everyone, but he provided, and 50 to 60 odd more people were served rice. So that was amazing.
Well, do you know what? I wonder, do you think with the feeding of 5,000 or whatever, do you think, presumably the kid or whatever brought his fish and bread and gave it to the disciples, but I'm guessing the whole crowd might not have been aware themselves of the logistics behind the food provision. Very true. Yeah, anyway.
It's not like a little text could be sent round.
Yeah.
Or it could be on Instagram.
Yeah. All right, you got your last one. What's the other thing?
Yeah, so the final thing, I think, and it follows on from following God's call, really, is when we were exploring who should plant into the estate that we're on now. So we're in an area of Bolton called Braitmet. And the way that our plants work within Antioch is when you plant a church, from the beginning, you're looking at where will we plant in 6 to 7 years. So Antioch church plants are small to small church plants, gets to about 40 discipled adults, and you plant out again onto another estate. And we were exploring this as Oldham's church, and we thought, it'll be somebody else that goes and leads that. we just felt a prompting that it was the Lord that was calling us. And me and my daughter were both reading missionary books at the time. We were reading about Gladys Aylward, and God clearly through that just said, you need to step out in faith again. So we started sharing with people at church. We feel it's God that's asked us to move to this estate. And Braitmet is a massive estate, and it's like well known for being kind of one of the most deprived parts of Bolton. And we started telling people, and a week later God provided us with the finances for a deposit for a house, which literally came from nowhere.
Wow.
And I just felt to share that because it's an example. Now, I don't, God might not provide that for everyone, or it's going to look different for everyone, but I really feel that's an example where we stepped out and God started laying the path as we've stepped out. And that's how it's felt. And we've been here a year now. We've been doing Sunday church for about 3 months, and it's still that, we have people trying to meet with us and say, well, what's the formula? And we're like, pray. Look at the early church. And it's stepping out in faith and trying to follow his lead, really.
Yeah. Oh.
So that's it. I just felt it was important to share that.
Yeah, brilliant. And God provides, doesn't he? I love it. In terms of that's our story. Is that we're all in Burundi 20 years, no thought of housing, education, and then someone says, "I'm going to pay for your kids through school. I'm going to buy your house," and it's the Lord. It takes care. I will provide not all your wants, but all your needs according to my glorious riches in Christ. Philippians 4 verse 19. Listen, if people want to be in touch with you, or what would you want to sort of plug?
I would say look at the Antioch website, www.antiochtnetwork, I think it's .org.uk. There's links there to contact Ben as well. But we're involved in New Wine as well, so we hang around a lot at New Wine and,
you'll be doing
and within that network.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I'll stick that in the blurb. And we didn't get the chance to talk about your work as a therapist, which it would be fascinating as well. It's another podcast. But anyway, bless you, bless Ben, bless your 3 kids, bless Oldham's, and now where you're on your new place. And it's been absolutely brilliant, Amy. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Thanks, Simon.
Wonderful. Well, listen, folks, if you've enjoyed it, I'm sure you have been inspired and challenged and stirred. Some of you, the Spirit is sort of nudging you, saying, I think I'm pushing you out of your comfort zone. Come on, bring it on. Listen, I'd love it if you gave us a good review, on a top review, not just a good review, a great review on iTunes and Spotify. That just means that more people get the algorithm to get sent their way. Please, if you've enjoyed it, can you share it with mates? And if you want to be in touch with me, simongilbert.com, or any of the other social media platforms. We'll be back next week with a fantastic guest. I want to thank Adam Thomas Steer for the editing and Mike Sandeman for the mixing. So we'll see you next week. In the meantime, God bless and toodaloo.